everybody. Hello. Carol said I must talk first. I'm Margaret Stanley. The project, right? Collaboration for a start was quite unique, right? 5 textile artists were sort of tasked to make artwork with 5 artists from using other media, right? We then had exchange our work and work on the other person's work, right? Now this is my art is very personal, so this to me was quite a challenge, right? So I decided, well, okay, let's try this, you know. So this is what the whole thing was about initially. I didn't have any new work, so we came up with a theme, transformation.
Transformation,
yes,
yeah.
A very sort of Carol, particularly very sort of spiritual thing. I came up with this transformation. Well, I looked in the dictionary, right, because I've been doing a lot of work based on hair, from a sort of decorative point of view. I thought fashion illustration and more for a fashion kind of view, because I was trained really in fashion and textiles. So I did all these pictures based on different hairstyles and things like that. So I thought, let me get away from this a bit. But the first thing I found when I looked up the definition was hair, exchanging yourself by hair and sort of things like, wigs and stuff like in pantomime and into different characters. So I thought, okay. So I had this idea of looking at hair through a mirror image and sort of like the whole thing of how people, even though we engage our black identity, we still have blonde wigs and we still bleach our skin and so forth. So I did this really small picture here of this whole idea of that. And then the bigger one on the other side, just around the corner, the whole thing of just sort of looking in the mirror, who do you see in the mirror? Yeah? So, Carol?
That's where I came in. I mean, this was the first image that I saw. And I decided, okay, we're talking about transformation, and to me, transformation requires reflection, and the mirror is a reflective surface. So why I included a mirror in mind is so that you, observing the work, become part of the transformative process that is taking place. Now, Margaret and I work very differently because we're working with totally different materials. And even though we're working on a singular idea of transformation, I don't have a singular idea of transformation. It's not a one-time thing. Transformation to me is an evolutionary process, right? Margaret tends to be more intuitive and immediate in the way she works. Yes. I am more thoughtful and more esoteric, and
she goes deeper into things, very deep.
I have to go deeper.
It's a fashion thing,
So when there were several processes that I had to go through to come up with what you see here today, because even though I already knew transformation was what I was going to be talking about and dealing with, I had in my mind one process that I wanted to use. Well, this is a process that I had done some 20 years ago when I still lived in Canada. You don't have the same materials here. You don't have the same equipment here. So it wasn't working. So I had to wheel and come again, and through several different processes.
Well, talk about the leaf. We need to talk about the leaf, because you might also see I have another very large piece of work over there with leaves.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Carol had this amazing big breadfruit leaf shape made out of metal. I'm not sure what metal was it.
Copper.
Copper, right?
Copper.
And we had this idea before even the mirror thing happened, sort of went in between somewhere, of maybe her working on this leaf, making it sort of developing it and so forth, and maybe having a video with like rare leaves, and then my fabric piece in the back, like an installation kind of thing.
Yeah, because again, dealing with the transformation
of the leaf,
from one stage into another stage, into its decay, into back its rejuvenation.
Yes, but me, I sort of took it to climate change and the whole idea of things degrading, and all the climate change conference was happening at the time, and I sort of, linked it to that, but in my usual decorative way, of course, which I tend to do. But what Carol had loads of problems with the material.
Well, it wasn't the material. I had a problem with the breadfruit leaf.
Tools.
There was no torch that could handle that size of metal to do the work that I needed to do on it. And the sculpture department at school didn't have a torch that was working. so I had to wheel and come again.
So we had to, but I'd already made that piece. So in the end, she actually added to it by doing metallic embroidery of words and stuff on it, and added to the embroidered comments I'd made, particularly blah blah comment at the top, which the young environmentalist, that's her comment on what was happening at climate change. I particularly like that one. That's really good.
Yeah, well, any metal words that you see on the leaf, that was my contribution.
Yes, and it really works.
Yeah, and on the bottom leaf where it is talking about decay, I added the glass beads to that, because even in decay, there is still a life that will be rejuvenated and regenerated out of the decay. So that was why I contributed.
You see how she's deep?
Now, when it comes to Margaret's contribution to my work, I'll tell you, initially, I had a large problem with this idea because it was difficult for me to think about. I saw it as interference with her work. And I was very conscious of not wanting to alter the integrity of her voice in her piece, So I wanted to keep it pretty subtle so that what I added to it would be something that didn't alter it so much as enhance it. So I don't know if you think that what I did enhanced it.
Well, what you did to that enhanced it totally. I mean, I felt it enhanced it. I mean, you didn't actually do anything to the Barbie girl ones, but you said that because of the mirror, it sort of set you off on the path of doing that mirror. But the dried limes, the whole thing that she did of this transformation of the limes and drying them at first. In fact, the first thing she did was grind the limes up and ask me to make beads with the ground limes and paper mache. I said, the paper mache. So I made all these balls of paper mache and ground, and because the idea was that it would smell of lime. It didn't smell of lime, because once you put sort of glue and stuff in there, it just didn't smell. And when I did them in greens and stuff, and they looked like Brussels sprouts. So
another wheel and come again.
So that didn't work. So, but the dried limes, I thought they were beautiful just in themselves, the actual dried shapes, But anyway, go to it, because, that's her thing.
Well, in dealing with the limes, to me, the limes represented, it was a metaphor for life transformation. You're moving from one stage to another stage to another stage. So I went through the dried limes. All 4 stages are represented here. The dried limes, some were actually baked to give them a different kind of texture. Some were cast in bronze, those are the metal ones you see, and some are encased in resin, another form of transformation. And then the final transformation, the final in this part of the process was to make a piece of wearable jewelry, because I didn't want this piece to be a wearable piece. I wanted it to be more about jewelry than to actually be jewelry that you can actually wear. So everything about this piece is metaphorical. Sorry, Margaret.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean.
So when we were tasked with adding something to the other's work,
I didn't get that till very late, very, very late. So I said, what am I going to, what? And then I got it in pieces, So initially, it's true. It was, because in the meantime, I'd done all this stuff because I work very intuitively. And also I use a lot of recycled stuff, and my materials are obviously much easier to work with than Carol's. Also, being a jeweler, she's the detail and the process, and it has to be done. Whereas me, if an accident happens, move with it, you know. And also, I use processes and techniques, but I cheat on them. I cheat on them because for me, the effect is what is important. I like to get the effect quickly. That's just me, okay? Yeah. But Carol, it's beautiful. It's, you know, and it will last longer, that's for sure. But you know, that's what happened. And I got this, and she said, well, you could line the back of the mask with fabric. And initially I thought, oh, and I thought it was African fabric. And then I thought, no, I need to make some fabric. So I thought, oh, the dried lines. So I got her dried lines, and I used them to print the fabric. So I actually printed the fabric with the dried lines, and overprinted and overprinted. And I lined the back of the mask, and I did the edge for the mirror. And then I thought, and I had leftover, so I just did a little collage. And then at the end, I sort of said, here, take this. Maybe you can sort of put it behind the mirror. So, you know, something to sort of maybe add a little more of my thing. And she actually used the little piece that I did, which was, you know, it sort of links it together.
It enhanced. And the other thing too, why I decided to use the fabric, apart from the fact that it was just really beautiful and I loved the colors, which brightened my monochromatic piece, is that my piece was so small compared to everybody else's. You know, if I don't do something, it's going to get lost. So, so I decided to just expand the idea slightly. So instead of a 12-inch piece, it's a 24-inch piece. And I think because of the fabric, it has much more impact visually, so that it's not lost anymore. It's not likely to get lost. And you know, it either it'll get lost because it's too small, or it'll stand out because it's so small, right? So
I just love using the dried lines. Some of them are ones I actually printed with. But when you print, because it's so small to print a lot of fabric, they kept falling apart. So I actually managed to save some and actually use them on the fabric, you know, apply them to the fabric. Because I like using found materials and things like that. And the thing is, I often use leftover broken jewelry and things that actually put on my work. You know, in fact, I thought at first Carl was going to add jewelry to my ladies, but that wouldn't have been Carol. So, I mean, I just love her piece. And I mean, I would wear it, you know. I mean, I know it's sort of, it's like as sort of art piece, but I would definitely wear it. It's a ring as well, which
yes, the ring is the final stage in this part of the transformation. But the ring is like the beginning of a next step that can happen following this exercise. You know, so now we've gone from raw lime, baked lime, transformed through different materials to now an actual wearable piece, incorporating the lime still. You know, so now it sparked another idea, you know, of creating a line of jewelry using the lime image. You know, I haven't quite gone the whole hog with it yet to see, you know, what direction am I going to go with that. But when I look at the limes, I'm seeing shapes and textures and all kinds of beautiful things that, you know, you usually pass by if you're not paying attention. You know?
I mean, they're really nice, especially when the bits that fall out and stuff, so they become different shapes within them. You know, I sort of, you know, I quite enjoyed working with them once I got them.
After a while. Trust me, we both fought this process.
I tried to behave.
So, are there any questions? Yes.
How often did you talk about what you like? Or were you just given the task to start thinking about it and start working? Did you communicate?
Yes,
I think we communicated, you know, mostly like that, a lot of messages.
Not really.
We didn't.
No,
she told me what to do. Believe it or not. Believe it or not, I think I was more guided by Carol, because basically I did stuff, right? And then we'd have the meetings, and then Carol would come and look, and then, you know, and nobody could think what they were going to do with my stuff. And so I didn't tell anybody what to do, trust me. She said you could line my mask. She told me that. She told me that was, and she said she wanted an edge for her mirror. which I had to cut very straight. So I had to cut that was straight. I don't do straight lines, so that was difficult. So basically, I
I
didn't,
didn't tell her to print the fabric.
no, she just said use fabric. So,
What I observed, I like what I'm seeing because it's showing the blending of approaches. One, but there's something deeper. You gotta go
Yes.
with her. In that, it's also showing how difficult it is to let go sometimes and to entertain somebody else's perspective.
Yeah.
And for me, this is a takeaway for what I do, right? That perspectives and voice, I didn't want to change her voice or diminish her voice. But at some point, I wouldn't use the word cave, but there was a movement toward embracing that perspective, and I found that very important.
Yeah. No, that there definitely was a movement. The last meeting that we had with Katrina and Winston, because up until then we were,
I kept saying, what is happening? What's happening? I kept saying, what's happening? Because
but that last meeting really clarified for us and made us comfortable with the idea of exchange. That it wasn't about changing somebody else's work. It was about enhancing in a way that both of us could feel comfortable with, you know. So it wasn't about I'm going to come in and take over your work and you won't
well,
recognize it when I'm done. you know, I didn't want to do that, and neither did she.
well, I would have been interested to see that. I would have been interested. I wouldn't have minded, to tell you the truth, if I'd given her my Barbie lady. Actually, my Barbie lady had less on it initially, but when I realized it was really probably going to be the piece, I added stuff and did more to it afterwards. So it was a bit more basic in the beginning. And I'd have been quite happy to give it to her to do whatever. What I want. It's Cecile.
Firstly, apologies for the tardiness.
You're what? Told me. Appreciate you coming.
Yes. You come late.
I know, because I said that. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
I said earlier that I'd done this as a follow-on from my hair pictures, which were sort of about, rather fashion, decorative kind of thing. And this was about the idea of the fact that even though we embrace our Black identity, you walk down the street, you still wear, say, blonde wigs, people still bleach their skin, and the whole idea of sort of transforming themselves into something that they are, the different skin, body enhancements, things that they're not naturally like that. But I mean, that's a thing to do with fashion, I know, because I've come from a fashion background, but it still surprises me how much it happens, So that is about who am I in the mirror? I'm this black woman, and yet still I want to wear a blonde wig and sort of, have blue lenses in my eyes, kind of thing. So that was just basically what it's about. It's not that deep because it's what you see every day. Got it. But it's deep in our psyche.
Of course it is.
It's deep in our psyche that we do this, But it's such a deep thing, and I mean, I just do it in a very sort of visual, intuitive way. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not really, I'm not deep, I'm not ready.
Did you listen to yourself just now? That was pretty deep.
Anyway, go on tell her about your materials again. Go on.
Okay, I chose the limes, and I'm treating the limes as a metaphor for transformation as an evolutionary process. So that's why we have different ways of handling the materials. Okay, so there's 4 different ways that the limes are handled in the piece. And 5, if you count the way that Margaret has used the limes, because she used the limes that I provided to actually print the fabric. So the material in the panel, the material that's behind the mask, the material lining the edge of the mirror, That's all printed with actual limes that Margaret created. So the limes that I'm using go through different processes. There's dried limes, there's baked limes, there's cast limes, there's limes encased in resin, and so on. And then there's a ring that uses a lime with gemstones. You know, so it's all about the evolution of change.
Anybody else? Okay.
Clear as mud.
You've had enough. I'm a Jamaican woman. Maybe I've had some issues with identity. As a Black person, I lived in England for about 18 years. At the college I went to, I was the only Black person in my art college for a time, for most of the time. And coming from a family that was kind of quite mixed, I had at that time quite a confidence in my identity then, but it's having lived there for for that period of time, there's a lot of questions and occasions and things that happen that make you question and that kind of thing. And so the whole thing of, and then doing fashion. I was trained initially as fashion and textile designer. Doing fashion is like the whole thing of transformation, isn't it? I mean, every season there's a new thing, and now people are more going backwards. I mean, I saw some things that were come back into fashion. I thought, well, I want that, I've worn all of those before, kind of thing. But the whole thing with the hair and the body shape and the bleaching of the skin, that is something that has sort of happened more recently, that people are doing that, because I think that a lot of in countries, Black people were seen, the lighter your skin was, the more accepted, the more you fitted in and stuff, and that has obviously come from that. But people didn't actually bleach themselves and do those things to themselves so much before. They used to straighten their hair and stuff like that when I was a child. But now it's really the whole, I mean, everything is just so transformed, So it really, it was the first thing. And because I've been doing the things with hair, and then I saw this thing in the dictionary that said, oh, this is the meaning of transformation. I thought, oh, what I need to do, I need to carry on with it. Because I've not just done decorative, I've done stuff about the Rasta girl that got her hair cut by the policewoman. That made me do a piece of work about the cuts, with sort of locks being cut or nothing, because that is also another thing. It's a political thing about hair, and why as a Black country we still prohibit children to have Black hairstyles and natural hair in some schools, and that whole thing, it's a big thing, and especially for women, because Black women, your hair is very important. I used to have a lot of hair, but so you probably think, why is this person talking about hair and she doesn't have any on her head? I used to have a lot of hair, but it's just the barber number 3 now. It's just, I can't, it's too much.
I have a question. Would it be possible to look at this new era of the wig and the bleach and the stuff as a passing fashion trend?
It don't pass. It's not passing though. It
Maybe
seems
it's
to be
not passing
getting
fast enough. You think so? Mm.
Well, you see a lot more natural hair in
Yeah.
a lot more natural hair in public and like a lot more young people.
Yeah.
Yes, young people are pushing it
Yeah.
now, and it's
Yeah.
fabulous. I mean, it's just so fabulous. Love it.
You know, because it's been quite a few years now that the alternative messages have been coming at us. You know, so yes. Yes. But I don't. But will it? Will it though? I mean, if you're talking about cycles, that's what cycles do. They cycle. They go around and come again.
Good.
Yeah.
Fair means light
Fair
skin.
means
I know
light
because it
skin,
never.
yes.
Yeah,
Right.
that's very.
And that. Mhm.
Yeah, that's true.
I suppose I want to tell you that we're all co-creators. No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.